Welcome to the Q&A session for Bob Henrit. If you haven't seen the interview, just click on one of the links. What we've done is on Facebook, we've had a few questions that have been sent in by some interested readers, knowing that Bob's being interviewed.
I was wondering where this was going.
Yeah. So I'm going to fire off with the first question, and you just said, you've been a band member, and there's a big distinction between the two different types of drummers. You've been a band member and a session drummer.
Yep.
All right. What's your preference?
Oh, I've also been a band leader, but which is another completely different thing, because there's a bit more responsibility to that.
Right.
I love it all. I mean, I just like I like playing the drums, and I like being in a band, and I like being in the studio. Mm-hmm. Although after 8 hours in the studio, you're a bit cooked, and you're ready to actually escape if you can.
Yeah.
But I love playing, and I played last night at a festival, and it was great. I enjoyed myself, and I smiled.
Right. Okay, that question was from Jay Marsh from Tooting in London. Next question. This one's from P. Tench from Hampstead in London. She said, you have a love for drumming and drums. What inspired you to open a drum store?
That's stupidity. What happened is that a friend of mine called Norman Sheffield, who owned Trident Studios,
right,
and also owned a company called Trillion, and also managed Queen, he had a lease available on a building in Wardour Street, right next to the ship, which was very useful. So he suggested, why didn't we turn it into a drum shop? The downstairs. Interestingly enough, the Who were above us, and the Stones were above them. It was a wonderful opportunity, and the Marquee was just down the road. And it had never been part of what I'd never thought about having a drum shop, but I'd been in lots of great drum shops and knew what I would want in a drum shop. So when he suggested it, I thought, why not? So what we did, we stole the best guys from every drum shop in London.
Really?
And they all came, yeah, absolutely. So that held them back for quite some time, because they had to regroup. So we had this new entity that was possibly more rock and roll. No, it was definitely more rock and roll. And we were right next to the ship, which was good, because I'll meet you in the ship and then we'll go into drum store. That was what guys were doing. And had we not fallen foul of punk, we would still be there. Right. But punks, this is not generally known, but punks didn't want to pay any money for anything. We needed to sell 2 or 3 drum sets a week to people who were interested. Drummers would come round the corner from Soho Square. They would buy a drum kit. And then the punks came along, and they would come into the drum shop and buy used drumsticks. Now, whilst the punk thing, bless them, they did save the rock and roll industry, because up until then, if you were in a new band, your only opportunity was to go on tour with Rod Stewart and give him 30,000 quid, or whoever it was, didn't have to be just Rod Stewart, give him 30,000 quid as a contribution to Sound and Lights, and that was the way forward. So the punks turned up and they played everywhere. They didn't care about church halls, they didn't want lights, they didn't want anything. They just wanted to play, and they did. And interestingly enough, where we were in Wardour Street, we were very close to the Marquee, and producers would rush in ready to pull their heads off, because they wanted a drummer to come down and play, because the drummer who had been playing on the punk track if they hadn't got it in one take, wasn't interested in doing another take. He wanted to get down the ship and have a drink. So and now we were capable of playing fast and loud. So we all got these silly gigs to do. I can't tell you who I played with, but I played with people that were presumably successful.
Right. But I was one of those people that actually came to the store. And every time you went in there, I've been there about 2 or 3 times, you bump into a famous drummer at the time.
Yeah. It was that.
I think they came to see you.
Well, the biggest problem is I wasn't always there.
Right.
Because I was a professional drummer and I was doing stuff, so I wasn't always there. Right. And every now and again I wake up to answer the guy's question, and think, you know what, I'd like to have a drum shop again. And then I discuss it with my wife, who says, no way. But there's another word in between no and way.
That's it. Well, bringing things up to date, which is, I don't know about then, but certainly now is it could be a controversial subject. Having been through a lifetime of drums, okay, what's your view on product endorsements and sponsorships?
Endorsements have to be earned, and you have to work hard to get an endorsement. Now, I was endorsed, my first endorsement was with Trixon, and at the same time I was endorsed by Zildjian. But you have to be in the public eye, otherwise there's no point in...
Of course.
And if you're not in the public eye, nobody's ever going to support you. What I think we should be saying in the 21st century is that an endorsement is a support. And the support is that if you need something, you can get it. If you turn up in Italy, you can get a drum kit, and you can get cymbals, and you can do the gig. In the Kinks, we never took a drum kit to America, ever. Pearl would provide one, which would turn up at the first gig and would then be sent back to them after the last gig.
Right.
And it never failed. It turned up and you played it, and that was great. So that's what an endorsement's about. And small drum companies can't do that. They don't, well, you know this from our time at Arbiter.
Yeah.
You can't do it. There's not the budget. And there are equally, having said all of that, there are drum companies that have become top heavy because they've given so many drum kits away to endorsers. And every now and again you'll see a drum kit for sale because the guy, whoever was the endorser, had too many of them.
Now, this next question comes from C. Grimshaw in Brighton.
Right.
And also wondering how old this person is, actually. It's quite intriguing. How difficult was recording an album back in the 70s as opposed to recording something today?
Well, then you had to play it. You had to play it in its entirety, and you could chop tape, and there are stories of, I was making an album in Marble Arch, somewhere in Marble Arch, and a very famous drummer was next door, but he wasn't there that day, and the tape op was chopping little bits of tape out of the 24 track. And there was a reason for that, to put it in time. So you could do that then, but it's laborious, it's it's enough to make you pull your head off. Whereas now, you can copy a verse, you can copy a middle eight, you can join the whole thing together, and it works. Right. But it ain't rock and roll. That's the point. Yeah. It won't speed up. But nowadays, it's much. I was going to say it's much quicker, and it probably is much quicker. I think it was Be Free that we did with Argent, and 51 takes. Wow. Now the interesting thing is that invariably for the drummer, the first 1 or 2 takes are the best, because there's a bit of angst, there's a bit of, you're worried about getting it right, and it puts a frisson into it. Once everybody starts settling into it and the drummer starts working out, you know what, I could put that lick in there, I could really, I could do that. So we don't have that anymore, and no. So that's why live albums for me, live albums are much more fun, and they have, for my money, they have a soul.
On that note, Bob
Is that
Henrit,
it?
thank you very much.
Cheers, Jezza.
All right, okay. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, and look out for the next interview.
Yep.
Hi, that was Jerome Marcus and his Q&A session with Bob Henrit. Hope you enjoyed it. Look out for Gilson Lavis soon.
Does anybody hear whether that was a load of bollocks or not? Was anybody listening? I think I could be crucified for some of that.
No, that's all right.